Today I'm going to read you the first chapter of The Beast of Buckingham Palace. It was noon. The sky was black. There had been darkness over the kingdom for half a century. For many years before, the people of Earth had not taken care of their homes. They had burned down all the forest, reducing every last tree to ash. They had pumped the rivers and lakes and seas full of waste, killing all the fish. They had dug deeper and deeper under the ground for oil, until the planet was hollow to its core. Eventually, the Earth took its revenge. The ice caps of Arctic and Antarctica melted. The flood was so mighty that the whole countries became submerged underwater. Violent earthquakes shook the entire cities to ground. All was left was piles and piles of rubble. Volcanoes erupted, pumping billions of tons of ashes into the air. Without the sunlight, the crops withered and died. Nothing could grow. The kingdom was plunged into eternal winter. It was the only world Alfred knew. He had been already 12 years old, but had never, ever seen sunlight. Often he dreamed how it must have feel of the sun on your face, or run through a field of tall grass and swim in the sunlit sea. But it was just that, a dream. The boy had seen a picture of suns in books and marvelled at it, a perfect circle of gold. Now the moon and the stars had become invisible too. Alfred would spend hours and hours imagining how the night sky must have looked with thousands of little lights twinkling through the blackness. He was one of those children who liked nothing more than being alone with his imagination. In truth, he had a little choice after being sickly his whole life. Soon after he was born, he became ill. As a baby, Alfred had not been expected to survive. Survive he did. Just. The child was pale as snow and as thin as dust. He wore thick glasses to aid his poor eyesight. Often Alfred was so weak he had to stay in bed all day. Thank goodness that all around his bed were piles and piles of books. Books, books, and more books. Books about animals, books about space, books about trees, and books about dinosaurs. Books about books. Books about history was his absolute favourite. The trouble was that there was a strict curfew in the building where Alfred lived. The night was the most dangerous time. That was when the most chance of attack from outside. Lights had to be out 8 o'clock sharp by order of the king. Anyone caught with lights on would be severely punished. Punishments were brutal in the kingdom. Those in the power had returned to medieval forms of torture. The thumb screw, the iron maiden, the breaking wheel, the pillory, the rack, the scold's bridle, the rat's dungeon, the head crusher, the iron chair. Despite the strict rules, the boy loved his books so much that he would carry on reading by candlelight under his covers. The night our story begins, Alfred was just doing that. He was reading a weighty leather-bound book about kings and queens of Britain. Though through the ages, the first known one was Alfred the Great. He had become a ruler in possibly long time ago, in 871. The boy was named after that first king, but it was hardly to believe anyone would describe Alfred as great. He felt anything but. As the boy was devouring the story of the beheading of Charles I in 1649, a deafening sound rocked the room. Kaboom! Alfred dropped his book. Thud. And his candle. He very nearly sets the covers alight. Woof! Smothering the flames and blowing out the candle. Whoosh! He pulled off his bed covers. Whip! A huge explosion outside that had illuminated the boy's bedroom with glowing red, orange, and yellow light. Alfred slid out of bed using all his strength and limped over the huge bay window. Just those few steps left him painfully out of breath. Ha, ha, ha. He leaned on the window frame to steady himself. Alfred's bedroom was high up on the top floor. From here he could see far across London. A building was ablaze, but not just any building. St. Paul's Cathedral. This historic structure, perhaps one of the most famous in the world, had been destroyed. Its huge white dome cracked as if it were nothing more than an egg. Huge plumes of black smoke billowed high into the air. No, thought Alfred. No, not St. Paul's. He had seen many London landmarks destroyed over the years. Nelson's column had been toppled to the ground. Crunch. The London Eye had been plunged into River Thames. Splash. The Royal Albert Hall roof caved in after a bomb had blasted it into pieces. Boom! However, none of these was as sacred as St. Paul's. This was a new low. The cathedral had been built after the Great Fire of London in 1666. The glorious structure had miraculously survived in the Blitz when the Nazi bombs rained down on London during World War II, but now it was burning to the ground. Alfred's next thought was revolutionaries. This had all the hallmarks of one of the attack. The boy had never met anyone from his top secret organization, but the Lord Protector had taught him much about them. From what Alfred had been told, the revolutionaries hated the fact that power had returned to the king. They wanted to overthrow him, behead him, just like the Roundhead had done to Charles I during the English Civil War. The revolutionaries stood only for death and destruction. This is why the Lord Protector said they need to be crushed at all cost. Rat, 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 tat, tat. There was a burst of machine gun. No! A distant sound of shouts. Arr! What was that scream? Alfred shivered. As much as he wanted to look away, he couldn't. Every day there was attacks over London, but explosions on the scale were rare. The boy pressed his hand up against the cold, thick glass and looked at the devastation. It was the kingdom Alfred would one day inherit. If you want to join me tomorrow for chapter 2, please do. And first, I'll show you this. It was dark here, and here it was very dark. And then Alfred, he's reading books here. And here, St. Paul's Cathedral, it's set on fire. And other ones, there's the London Bridge, Big Ben, all of it. So that's the end. You can join me tomorrow for it and think what will happen in chapter 2. Bye!